A feared Mafia boss screams at his new nurse to give him the pills that are killing him, never realizing that the woman refusing him is the daughter of the only person he ever truly loved, and the only one who can save him from himself before his enemies finish what his addiction started. Stella Dawson, a 24-year-old nurse from abroad, arrives at the fortress-like estate of Songjin, the dying dragon of Seoul. To his guards and lieutenants, she appears to be just another naive caretaker who will break under his volcanic rage. They watch her withstand shattered glass, venomous insults, and violent outbursts without flinching. What they don't know is that Stella hasn't come for the generous salary. She has traveled across continents to honor her mother's dying wish, carrying a photograph and a secret that will force the dragon to choose between the monster he became and the man he once was. The iron gates groaned open like the jaws of some ancient beast, and Stella's taxi rolled into a world where sunlight seemed to die on contact. The estate sprawled before her, all black stone and sharp angles, wrapped in walls topped with cameras that tracked her arrival with mechanical indifference. She counted 4 guards before the car even stopped. By the time she stepped out, she'd spotted 8 more. "Miss Dawson?" A man in an immaculate suit approached, his hand conspicuously near his jacket. "I'm Mr. Kong. Head of security. Just Stella is fine." She lifted her single suitcase from the trunk, refusing his offered assistance. The driver couldn't leave fast enough, gravel sprayed as he reversed toward freedom. Kang's eyes narrowed slightly. The dragon doesn't do fine. He does formality or fury. Usually fury. He gestured toward the mansion's entrance, where 2 more guards flanked doors that looked designed to withstand a siege. "Your predecessor lasted 4 days. What happened to her?" "She quit. They all quit." He led her up the steps, past hedges trimmed with military precision and fountains that had long since run dry. The one before her made it 6. The record is 11 days. That nurse had military training. Stella said nothing. The mansion's shadow fell over her like a burial shroud. Inside, the oppression deepened. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, but half the bulbs were dead or dying. Priceless artwork lined walls stained with what looked like thrown food, or worse. The air carried the sour tang of alcohol, antiseptic, and something darker. Decay, perhaps. Or despair. Staff moved through hallways like ghosts, eyes down, voices extinct. A maid carrying fresh linens flinched when Stella nodded hello, then scurried away as if kindness itself was dangerous here. "House rules," Kong said, stopping before a grand staircase. "No unauthorized movement. No personal calls on estate grounds. No questions about the dragon's business. No friends, no visitors, no exceptions." He paused. "And never, ever, tell him no. I'm a nurse, not a yes woman." Kong almost smiled. "Almost. That attitude is why we keep a termination bonus ready. You'll need it." He started up the stairs. The dragon's suite is on the 3rd floor. East Wing. He hasn't left it in 43 days. With each step higher, the temperature seemed to drop. Stella heard it before she saw anything, a sound like distant thunder, rhythmic and furious. Something heavy hitting something solid. Again. They reached a hallway lined with guards stationed every 20 feet. At the end, an ornate double door vibrated with each impact. "He knows you're here," Kong said quietly. Fair warning, the last nurse who walked through those doors came out crying before she even saw him. The one before that needed stitches. Stella adjusted her medical bag, fingers brushing the locket beneath her scrubs. Inside it, a photograph. A promise. A ghost who'd made her swear an oath that had carried her across an ocean to this gilded prison. Then I suppose, she said, reaching for the handle, I should stop wasting his time. The door opened to darkness and the smell of expensive scotch mixed with old sweat. And somewhere in that darkness, the dragon was waiting. The darkness wasn't complete. Thin blades of afternoon light sliced through gaps in heavy curtains, illuminating a war zone. Overturned furniture. Shattered glass. Pill bottles scattered like spent shell casings across imported marble. And in the center of it all, a man who'd once made generals nervous sat slumped in a leather chair, shaking. Song Jin didn't look up when she entered. His white shirt was half unbuttoned, soaked through with sweat. Dark hair, probably immaculate in photographs, hung in damp strands across a face carved from equal parts rage and ruin. He couldn't have been more than 45, but pain had aged him into something ancient. Get out. His voice was gravel and broken glass. Stella set her medical bag on the only clear surface she could find. I'm Stella Dawson. Your new nurse. I said. He tried to stand, got halfway up before his body betrayed him. A violent tremor seized his right arm. He grabbed for the chair, missed, and would have fallen if she hadn't moved. Her hand caught his elbow. Steady. Professional. He jerked away like she'd burned him, stumbling backward into the chair. When he looked up, his eyes were bloodshot and feral. Don't touch me. You were falling. I don't fall. The tremor worsened. His hands clenched into fists, knuckles white, fighting against his own nervous system. A muscle in his jaw jumped. Where are my pills? According to your chart, you've exceeded. I don't care about the fucking chart. He lunged forward, faster than she'd expected from someone in his condition. His hand caught her wrist, grip weak but desperate. The pills. Now. Or I'll have Kong put a bullet in your skull and find someone who understands how this works. Stella didn't pull away. Didn't flinch. She simply met his eyes and waited. The silence stretched. His grip loosened, confused by her stillness. This is how it works, she said quietly. You're in withdrawal. Oxycodone, probably. Mixed with alcohol, which makes it worse. Your body is screaming for more because you've taught it to scream. But more will kill you faster than the cancer already is. You think I care about? A spasm cut through him, vicious enough to double him over. The sound he made was animal. Raw. She knelt beside the chair. I level now. I think you care about dying like this. Weak. Begging. While your enemies wait outside these walls for you to finish the job yourself. His breathing came in ragged gasps. You know nothing about my enemies. I know they're watching. I counted cameras on every approach to this estate. I know your guards look nervous. I know men who were once afraid of you now wonder if you're worth protecting. She paused. And I know you haven't left this room in over a month because you don't want them to see what you've become. Something flickered behind the rage. Something that might have been shame. So here's what happens next, Stella continued. I'm going to help you manage the pain without the pills. It won't be easy. It won't be comfortable. And you're going to hate me for it. She stood, releasing herself from his weakened grip. But you'll be able to stand again. And maybe, just maybe, you'll remember what it felt like to be feared for your strength instead of pitted for your weakness. Song Jin stared at her, chest heaving. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You have no idea who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to. She opened her medical bag. The question is, do you? 3 days into their Cold War, Stella noticed the blood. Song-jin had been pacing, his new habit since she'd forced him into a modified withdrawal protocol. Back and forth across the room like a caged animal, burning off the aggression that used to fuel his empire. But his gait had changed. A slight hitch in his left leg. A wince he tried to hide. "Sit down," she said, not looking up from the medication log she was updating. "I don't take orders. You're bleeding through your pant leg. Sit down or fall down. Your choice." He stopped mid-stride, glanced down at the darkening stain spreading along his thigh, and cursed in Korean. The words were creative enough that she almost smiled. When he finally dropped into the chair, more collapse than sit, she moved to examine it. "How long?" 2 weeks. Maybe 3. 3 weeks? She grabbed scissors from her bag. "And you told no one?" "Who would I tell?" His laugh was caustic. "Kong? My guards? The moment they see weakness, they calculate my replacement value." He grabbed her wrist before she could cut the fabric. "They're loyal to power, not people. Never forget that." She met his eyes. Held them. "I'm not them." Something shifted in his expression, confusion, maybe, or the faintest hint of curiosity. He released her. The wound was worse than she'd expected. A deep gash, poorly self-treated, now infected. The skin around it was hot and inflamed, angry red streaks radiating outward. "This needs proper cleaning. It's going to hurt. Everything hurts." But he gripped the chair arms, bracing himself. She worked in silence, cleaning the wound with steady hands while he breathed through clenched teeth. To his credit, he didn't cry out. Didn't flinch away. Just stared at some fixed point on the ceiling, jaw locked, every muscle rigid. "Your man should have helped you with this," she said, applying antiseptic. "My men don't touch me unless I order it. And I don't show them blood unless it's someone else's. That's a lonely way to live. Loneliness keeps you alive in my world." Stella began suturing, her movements precise and practiced. She'd leaned forward, close enough that her locket slipped free from beneath her scrubs, a small silver oval on a delicate chain. It caught the light, swaying gently with each stitch. Song-jin's gaze fixed on it. His entire body went still. "Where did you get that?" She glanced up, following his stare to the locket. "It was my mother's." "Let me see it." "I'm in the middle of." "Now." The word came out strangled. Not angry. Something else entirely. She sat back, fingers instinctively moving to the locket. "Why?" He reached out slowly, like approaching something sacred or cursed. His hand trembled, not from withdrawal this time. His fingers stopped just short of touching it. "That design. The engraving on the edge. I've seen it before. Lots of lockets have. Not like that." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I had one made. Years ago. Custom work. There was only ever one copy." His eyes lifted to hers, and in them she saw the first crack in his armor. Not rage. Not pain. Something far more dangerous. Recognition. "Who was your mother?" Stella's hand closed around the locket. "Someone who knew you a long time ago." Her name. The words hung between them like a loaded gun. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Guards changing shifts. The world continuing, oblivious. "Grace," Stella finally said. "Grace Chen." The name hit him like a bullet. All color drained from his face. Stella left Song-jin's room at dawn to find the mansion holding its breath. The guards in the hallway had multiplied overnight, 6 now instead of 3. They didn't acknowledge her as she passed, but she caught the glances they exchanged. The kind of looks men share when they're taking inventory of exits. In the kitchen, she found staff clustered around a radio playing news in rapid Korean. They scattered when she entered, but not before she caught the word that made them all nervous: successor. Coffee? A young maid offered, her hands shaking slightly as she poured. Thank you. Stella accepted the cup, noting how the girl kept glancing toward the door. Is something happening? I don't know anything, miss. I just work here. But her eyes said differently. Stella found Kong in the security office, surrounded by monitors showing every angle of the estate. He was on the phone, speaking in clipped sentences. When he saw her, he ended the call abruptly. How is he? Stable. The infection is responding to antibiotics. She set her coffee down. How long have those extra guards been posted? Since midnight. Why? Kong studied her for a long moment, weighing something. Finally, he gestured to one of the monitors. See the black sedan? Third camera angle. It's been parked there for 6 hours. And it belongs to the Choi faction. They've been circling like sharks for months, waiting for the dragon to, he stopped himself. To die? To show weakness. He switched to another camera. The east perimeter has had 3 attempted breaches this week. Nothing serious. Just tests. They're measuring our response time. Our readiness. His jaw tightened. They're measuring whether we're still worth fearing. A voice crackled over the radio on his desk. Kong responded in Korean, then turned back to Stella. 2 of my best men quit yesterday. Took severance and disappeared. 3 more have been asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that get asked when soldiers start shopping for new generals. Stella moved closer to the monitors, watching the guards patrol the grounds. Their movements were precise, professional. But there was something in their body language, a tension that went beyond vigilance. They looked like men preparing for a transition. An ending. They think he's finished, she said quietly. They think he's been finished for months. The only reason we haven't had a full-scale mutiny is because no one's certain enough to make the first move. Kong lit a cigarette, his first sign of stress. The dragon built his empire on fear and respect. But fear fades when the monster stops roaring. And respect dies when strength becomes a memory. He's getting stronger. The withdrawal protocol is. The withdrawal protocol doesn't matter if he can't show them he's still the dragon. Kong blew smoke toward the ceiling. In our world, perception is reality. And right now, the perception is that Song Jin is a dying king locked in a tower, too weak to even walk his own halls. A door slammed somewhere in the mansion. Raised voices followed, guards arguing. Kang's radio erupted with chatter. He listened, his expression darkening. There's been a vote. Unofficial. Quiet. But a vote nonetheless. A vote on what? On how long they wait before they start taking orders from someone else. Stella's hand moved to her locket. Upstairs, Song Jin was probably awake now, pacing his gilded cage, unaware that his empire was dissolving beneath him like sand. How long? She asked. Kong met her eyes. Days. Maybe less. 6 months earlier. London. The hospice room smelled of lavender and lies, the kind meant to cover up the scent of death with something gentler. Stella sat beside the narrow bed, holding a hand that had once been strong enough to work double shifts and still braid her daughter's hair before school. Now Grace-chan was barely there at all. "Mom." Stella's voice cracked. "Mom, please. Save your strength." But Grace's eyes had that feverish clarity that came near the end, when the body knew what the mind refused to accept. Her grip tightened with surprising force. "Have to tell you." Each word cost her. "Before I don't. We have time." The doctor said. "The doctors lie to be kind." A ghost of a smile. "I'm a nurse." "I know." She coughed, and Stella helped her sip water. "There's a man in Seoul." Stella had heard fragments over the years. A love story her mother rarely spoke of. A life left behind when she'd fled to England, pregnant and alone, starting over with nothing but a new name and fierce determination. "You don't have to." Song-jin. The name came out like a prayer. Like a confession. "His name is Song-jin." Stella went very still. "I loved him." Grace's breathing rattled. "God help me, I loved him even after I saw what he was becoming. What that world was making him." Tears tracked down sunken cheeks. "He was good once. Before the violence. Before the power corrupted everything it touched." "Mom. I left because I was pregnant. With you." Her eyes found Stella's. "He didn't know. Couldn't know. If his enemies discovered he had a child." She shuddered. "So I ran. Changed my name. Became someone else." "Why are you telling me this now?" Grace reached toward the bedside table. Stella helped her open the drawer, pulling out a small silver locket. The engraving caught the fluorescent light, an intricate dragon wrapped around a lotus flower. "He gave me this." Said the dragon was him, fierce, dangerous. "The lotus was me, beautiful despite growing in mud." Grace pressed it into Stella's palm. "Keep it. Remember that he wasn't always a monster." "I don't understand." "What do you want me to?" "He's dying." Grace's voice strengthened with urgency. "I heard through old contacts. Cancer. He's dying alone in that fortress he built, surrounded by people who fear him but don't love him. Who'll abandon him the moment he shows weakness." Stella stared at her mother. "You can't be asking me to." "I'm asking you to give him what I couldn't. A chance at peace. At redemption." Grace's grip became desperate. "He doesn't know about you. Doesn't know he has a daughter. But he's alone, Stella. Dying the way he lived, surrounded by violence and emptiness. He's a criminal. A killer. He's a human being who lost his way." Tears fell freely now. "And he's your father." The words hung in the sterile air like smoke. "I can't ask you to forgive him for things he doesn't know he needs forgiveness for," Grace whispered. "But I'm asking you to be there. To show him that love existed. That it mattered. That he mattered to someone beyond what he could take or destroy. Mom. Promise me." Her breathing grew labored. "Promise you'll find him. That you won't let him die believing he was only a monster. Promise me, Stella." Stella looked at the locket in her hand. At her mother's pleading eyes. At the truth that had shaped her entire existence without her knowing. "I promise." Grace smiled. Released. "Thank you, baby. Thank you." She died 3 hours later, that smile still on her lips. And Stella booked a flight to Seoul. Song-jin didn't speak for 2 days after hearing Grace's name. He took his medications in silence. Allowed Stella to check his vitals without protest. But his eyes followed her with an intensity that made the air feel thin, like the room couldn't hold both his questions and her answers. On the 3rd day, the silence shattered. "You're lying." He stood by the window, back rigid, silhouette dark against the filtered light. Grace never had children. She would have told me. She left before she knew. Stella continued organizing his medication schedule, her voice steady. By the time she was certain, you were already becoming someone she couldn't bring a child near. So she ran. Like a coward. She survived. There's a difference. He spun around, and the dragon was fully present now, not the broken addict in withdrawal, but the man who'd built an empire on calculated ruthlessness. You come into my home. Under false pretenses. Manipulate your way into my confidence. And now you tell me this convenient story about being the daughter of the only woman He stopped, jaw clenched. Get out. Stella looked up from her clipboard. No. What did you say? I said no. Your wound needs fresh dressing in 2 hours. Your blood pressure medication is due at. I don't care about the medication. He crossed the room in 3 strides, towering over her. You think you can walk in here with that locket and some fairy tale about Grace and I'll just, what? Welcome you with open arms? Believe every word? I think you recognized the locket the moment you saw it. She stood, meeting his fury with calm. I think you know there was only one copy. I think you remember giving it to her the night before she disappeared. His hand shot out, gripping the edge of the desk between them. Kong. Get in here. The door opened immediately. The head of security appeared, hand near his weapon. Remove her. Now. I want her off the estate within the hour. Kong moved forward, but Stella didn't budge. Is that what you do? Her voice cut through the room like a scalpel. When things get difficult? When someone tells you a truth you don't want to hear? You throw them out? Have them removed? I've had people killed for less disrespect than you've shown. Then do it. She stepped closer, not away. Pull the trigger yourself instead of hiding behind Kong. Or is that it? You can't anymore, can you? The great dragon, reduced to barking orders from a room he's too afraid to leave. Songjin's face went white. Careful. Why? What will you do? You can barely walk 50 feet without your leg bleeding. You shake so hard some mornings you can't hold a glass. Your own men are taking bets on when to abandon you. She paused, letting each word land. You're not a dragon anymore. You're just a coward hiding behind a suit and a reputation built on what you used to be. The slap came fast, his palm cracking across her cheek with enough force to snap her head sideways. The room went dead silent. Stella straightened slowly, a red mark blooming on her face. She touched it almost absently, then looked him dead in the eye. My mother loved you, she said quietly. I've spent 6 months trying to understand why. And just now? For the first time, I can't. She walked toward the door. Where are you going? His voice was hoarse. You ordered me to leave. I'm leaving. She paused at the threshold, hand on the doorframe. Grace died believing you were worth saving. That underneath everything, there was still a good man. She was wrong. Maybe. Stella looked back at him, this trembling, furious, broken man who was her father and didn't know it. Or maybe you've just worked so hard to become a monster that you've forgotten how to be anything else. She left the door open behind her. And for the first time in 43 days, Songjin was completely, utterly alone. Stella made it halfway down the grand staircase before she heard the footsteps behind her. Not Kang's measured stride. Not the heavy boots of guards. Something uneven. Struggling. She turned to find Songjin gripping the banister, descending one careful step at a time. In the 3 weeks she'd been here, he'd never left his room. Now he moved like a man crossing a minefield, each step a negotiation with pain and pride. Stop, he said. She waited, suitcase in hand, as he made the agonizing journey down. By the time he reached her level, sweat beaded his forehead and his breathing came hard. You can't leave. You ordered me to. He looked away, jaw working. The words seemed to cost him everything. I'm countermanding that order. Why? Because, he gripped the banister harder. Because you're right. About all of it. And I can't afford for you to be right and gone. Stella set down her suitcase. The foyer stretched around them, vast and empty. Somewhere in the east wing, she could hear the muted sounds of the household staff pretending not to listen. The mark on your face, he said quietly. I shouldn't have. No. You shouldn't have. I don't apologize. Ever. It's a weakness in my world. Then we're at an impasse. He looked at her then, really looked. You're not afraid of me. Even now. Even after, he gestured vaguely at her bruised cheek. Why? Stella considered the question. Considered this man who was her father and a stranger. Who'd killed people and loved her mother. Who was dying and didn't know his own daughter stood before him. I've seen real monsters, she finally said. And I'm not one? You're a man who made monstrous choices. There's a difference. She moved to sit on the stairs, and after a moment, he joined her, keeping a careful distance. Real monsters enjoy the pain they cause. They feed on it. You? You built walls so high you forgot there was a world outside them. And now you're dying inside those walls, alone, because you convinced yourself that's what strength looks like. It's what survival looks like. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're not surviving. You're waiting. Locked in a room, sedated into numbness, while your empire crumbles and your enemies gather. She turned to face him. My mother told me stories. About a man who started with nothing. Who protected his neighborhood when no one else would. Who fought because people needed someone to fight for them. That man died a long time ago. Or maybe he's just buried under 30 years of violence and reputation. She paused. Maybe he's still there. Somewhere. Songjin was quiet for a long moment. Grace really told you that? About, before? She told me you were good once. That the world made you hard, but it didn't start that way. Stella's hand moved to her locket. She loved you enough to run rather than watch what you were becoming. And she loved you enough that her dying wish was for someone to be with you at the end. To remind you that you were more than what you became. Why you? Why send her daughter into, he gestured at the mansion, the guards, the violence implicit in every corner. Into this? Because I'm a nurse. It's what I do. I see people at their worst and I help them anyway. She met his eyes. And because she thought maybe you deserved one person who saw you as human instead of a weapon or a target. I hit you. Yes. I could hit you again. You could. But you won't. How do you know? Because it scared you more than it scared me. She stood, offering her hand. Come on. Your leg is bleeding again. Let's get you upstairs before Kong has a heart attack watching us on the security cameras. He stared at her outstretched hand like it was something alien. Dangerous. Then, slowly, he took it. The explosion came at 2:47 a.m. Stella jolted awake in the small room adjacent to Songjin's suite, the windows rattling in their frames. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then alarms shrieked to life and the mansion plunged into darkness. She was on her feet instantly, grabbing her medical bag by muscle memory. Through the window, she saw flames licking up from the east gate. Gunfire crackled in the distance, sharp, percussive, getting closer. The door to Songjin's room crashed open. He stood silhouetted against emergency lighting, already dressed, a pistol in his hand that hadn't been there yesterday. "How many?" he barked into a radio. Kang's voice came back, strained. "At least 20. Maybe more. They blew the transformer, we're on backup power only. East and north perimeters are compromised." The Choi faction? Worse. It's everyone. Choi, the Min brothers, even the Yakuza elements. They're not fighting each other. Static crackled. They've formed a coalition. They're coming for you. Songjin's face went stone. He turned to Stella. "There's a safe room. 3rd sublevel. Kong will take you. I'm not leaving you. This isn't a debate." Glass shattered somewhere below. Shouts in Korean. Return fire from Songjin's guards. The acrid smell of smoke began filtering through the ventilation. "Sir." A guard burst into the hallway, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "They're in the West Wing. Park and Chen are down. We can't hold." The lights died completely. Emergency strips along the baseboards provided the only illumination, a sickly red glow that turned everything into a horror show. Songjin grabbed Stella's arm. "Move. Now." They ran, or rather, she ran while he moved in a controlled limp sprint, favoring his wounded leg but refusing to slow down. Behind them, the sounds of combat intensified. Gunfire. Breaking wood. Men screaming orders and warnings. Kong appeared from a side corridor, flanked by 3 guards. "The main stairwell is blocked. We have to go through the gallery." They pivoted, moving through darkened hallways that Stella had only seen in daylight. Now they were a maze of shadows and red emergency light. Paintings worth millions looked down like silent witnesses to the Empire's collapse. An explosion rocked the building, closer this time. The floor buckled. Stella stumbled, and Songjin caught her, pulling her upright without breaking stride. "How did they coordinate this?" he demanded of Kong. "They've been planning for weeks. Maybe months. Waiting for the right moment. And they chose tonight because word got out that you've been improving." They couldn't wait any longer. They reached the gallery, a long room lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. Through them, Stella could see the grounds lit by fire and muzzle flashes. The beautiful, manicured lawns were now a battlefield. Bodies lay motionless near the fountain. A vehicle burned by the gate. "Jesus," she whispered. "Keep moving," Songjin ordered. But Kong had stopped, listening to his radio. His face went pale. "Sir." "They're in the main house. 4th squad just fell back to the 2nd floor. We have maybe 3 minutes before." The windows exploded inward. Glass became shrapnel. Stella felt Songjin slam into her, driving them both to the floor as bullets chewed through the space where they'd been standing. The guards returned fire, their weapons deafening in the enclosed space. "The panic room!" Kong shouted over the chaos. "We have to reach the panic room." Songjin pulled Stella to her feet, shielding her with his body as they ran. Blood ran down his arm, whether his or from someone else, she couldn't tell. Behind them, the invaders poured through the shattered windows like a flood. And the dragon's lair, after 43 days of silence, finally roared back to life. The panic room door sealed with a hydraulic hiss, cutting off the chaos like a guillotine blade. Silence rushed in, absolute, suffocating. Then Songjin's ragged breathing. Kong muttering into a dead radio. And Stella's own heartbeat, thundering in her ears. The room was smaller than she'd expected. Steel-reinforced walls. A bank of monitors showing security feeds, half of them black, the rest displaying scenes of carnage. Medical supplies. Weapons. Enough provisions to last a week. "Status," Songjin demanded. Kong cycled through the working cameras. We've lost the east wing entirely. Fourth squad is pinned down near the garage. Second floor is, he stopped, jaw tight. We're down to maybe 8 men. Against 40, maybe 50. Communications? Jammed. They came prepared. Kang's hand trembled slightly as he checked his weapon. This was surgical, sir. They knew our rotations, our weak points, our backup protocols. Someone talked. Someone always talks when the king looks weak. Song Jin slammed his fist into the wall, then immediately regretted it. His wounded arm buckled and he grabbed the desk for support. Blood seeped through his shirt sleeve. Let me see that, Stella said, moving toward him with her medical bag. I'm fine. You're bleeding. Sit down. For once, he didn't argue. Maybe because Kong was there, watching. Maybe because the adrenaline was fading and pain was rushing in to fill the void. He dropped into a chair while Stella cut away his sleeve. The bullet had grazed him, a deep furrow along his bicep, but nothing vital hit. She worked quickly, cleaning and bandaging while Kong monitored the feeds. They're searching room by room, Kong reported. Methodical. They're not just here to kill you quickly. They want to be sure. How long before they find this room? The entrance is hidden behind the false bookshelf in your study. But if they have someone who knows the layout. He didn't finish the sentence. Stella tied off the bandage. Her hands were steady, but something in her chest had come loose. This was real. This was happening. Her father, a man who didn't know he was her father, was about to die in this steel box, and all her promises to her mother would die with him. We should tell them, she said quietly. Both men looked at her. Tell who what? Song Jin asked. Tell you. The truth. Her fingers moved to her locket, hands trembling now. I didn't come here just because of my mother's dying wish. I came because, she stopped, swallowed hard. Because you deserve to know. Stella, Kong warned. This isn't the time. There might not be another time. She opened the locket with shaking hands. Inside was a photograph, old and creased. 2 images side by side. On the left, Grace Chen, young and radiant, laughing at the camera. On the right, a baby. Maybe 3 months old. Dark hair. Solemn eyes. She held it out to Song Jin. He stared at it for a long moment, not taking it. What is this? My mother kept this with her always. The 2 most important people in her life, she said. Stella's voice cracked. The woman she was, and the daughter she raised. I don't understand. Look at the date on the back. He took the locket carefully, reverently, and turned it over. His eyes found the inscription engraved in tiny letters, Grace and Stella. February 14, 1999. The math was simple. Brutal. She left in May of 1998, he whispered. And I was born 9 months later. Stella met his eyes. She told me you were a good man once. Before the world made you into something else. She told me you deserved to know that your life mattered. That you weren't just the dragon. That once, you were someone who loved and was loved. Song Jin's hands trembled. The locket nearly slipped from his fingers. She told me you were my father. The words fell like stones into still water. On the monitors behind them, armed men advanced through smoke-filled hallways, searching. And in the panic room, the dragon finally understood what he was about to lose. Song Jin stared at the photograph like it was written in a language he'd forgotten how to read. Grace was pregnant, he said, voice hollow. All this time. She was carrying he looked up at Stella, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she saw past the dragon entirely. Saw only a man discovering he'd had a daughter for 24 years and never known. Why didn't she tell me? Because she saw what you were becoming. What your world would do to a child. Stella's throat burned. She loved you enough to run. To protect me from the life you lived. And you came anyway. She asked me to. At the end. A tear tracked down Stella's cheek. She said you were dying alone. That you deserved to know someone cared. That you were more than the monster everyone feared. Kong cleared his throat. Sir, they've reached the second floor. We need to decide. How long have you known? Songjin interrupted, still looking at Stella. That I was your father? Since the day she died. 6 months ago. 6 months. He said it like a prayer or a curse. You've been here 3 weeks. Treating me. Listening to me rage. Letting me. His hand moved to his own cheek, mirroring where he'd struck her. God. What have I done? You've survived, Stella said. The same way she did. The same way I learned to. On the monitors, the invaders were breaching the 3rd floor. Methodical. Patient. Death arriving on a schedule. Songjin stood slowly. Something had shifted in his posture, the hunched, defensive stance of a sick man being replaced by something else. Something older. More dangerous. Kong. The weapons locker. Sir. Open it. Kong hesitated, then moved to a panel on the wall. A biometric scan. A hidden compartment slid open, revealing an arsenal. Pistols. Rifles. Body armor. Everything the dragon would need for one last stand. You can't go out there, Stella said. You're wounded. Weak. They'll kill you. They're going to kill me anyway. He began strapping on armor with practiced efficiency, hands steady now. But they're not touching you. Do you understand me? I've failed at everything, at being good, at protecting the people I loved, at being someone Grace could be proud of. He locked eyes with Stella. But I will not fail at this. This is suicide. This is fatherhood. He said it simply. Finally. 24 years late and performed badly, but it's all I have left to give you. He checked a weapon, loaded it with the muscle memory of decades. When he looked up again, the dragon was fully awake, not the sick, raging addict she'd been treating, but the man who'd built an empire on will alone. Grace told you I was a good man once, he said quietly. I can't be that man again. Too much blood. Too many sins. But I can be a father for the next 10 minutes. I can make sure you walk out of here alive. Songjin. Dad. The word stopped her cold. He smiled, small, sad, real. If we're doing this, if this is the only time I get to be your father, then call me what I am. Stella's vision blurred. Dad. Please. There has to be another way. There isn't. Kong knows it. I know it. He moved to the door, placed his hand on the release mechanism. The panic room has a secondary exit. East Tunnel. It comes up in the gardens, past their perimeter. Kong will take you. I'm not leaving you. Yes. You are. He looked at her with eyes that held 3 weeks of conversations, a lifetime of regrets, and something that might have been love if he'd had more time to learn how. Because you're my daughter. And this is what parents do. His hand moved to the door release. Tell me one thing, he said. Did Grace, at the end, was she happy? Stella thought of her mother's final smile. The peace that had settled over her when the promise was made. Yes, she whispered. She was happy. Songjin nodded. Accepted it. Let it be enough. Then he opened the door and stepped into the fire. The hallway outside the panic room was thick with smoke and a copper smell of blood. Songjin moved through it like a ghost returning to haunt his own house. His legs screamed with each step, but he'd learned long ago how to convert pain into fuel. Behind him, he could hear Kong ushering Stella toward the secondary exit, her protests fading as the steel door sealed them away. Good. She was safe. Nothing else mattered. He found the first group on the main staircase, 4 men in tactical gear, sweeping upward with professional precision. They saw him emerge from the smoke and froze, perhaps surprised to see the dragon vertical, armed, and very much still dangerous. Looking for me? Songjin asked in Korean. They opened fire. He was already moving, using the banister for cover as bullets chewed through antique wood. He returned fire, 3 shots, 3 bodies falling. The 4th man rushed him, and Songjin met him with the butt of his rifle, feeling ribs crack on impact. Tell your friends, he said to the gasping man, the dragon isn't dead yet. He moved deeper into the chaos. His mansion had become a war zone, but it was his war zone. He knew every corner, every shadow, every angle. The invaders had numbers and youth and the arrogance of believing they'd already won. He had 30 years of surviving impossible odds. 2 more fell in the gallery, the same room where Stella had nearly died. He made sure their bodies blocked the windows, a message written in consequences. In the dining hall, he caught 3 from behind, executing them with the cold efficiency that had built his reputation. But there were so many. For every man he dropped, 2 more appeared. His ammunition wouldn't last. His body already trembled with exhaustion, adrenaline only carrying him so far. A bullet caught his shoulder, through and through, missing bone but punching fire through his entire left side. He stumbled, caught himself against a wall, kept moving. There, someone shouted in Korean. The dragon. He's wounded. They converged from 3 directions. Songjin counted 8, maybe 9. Too many. He had 4 bullets left and a body that was held together by willpower and spite. He thought of Grace. Of the life he could have had if he'd been brave enough to choose differently. He thought of Stella. His daughter. Grace's gift to a man who'd never deserved either of them. He stepped into the center of the foyer, where the grand chandelier hung dark and silent overhead. Made himself visible. Made himself a target. You want the dragon? He shouted. Come take him. They came. He fought like he'd never fought before, not for territory or respect or the cold mathematics of survival. He fought the way a father fights when his child's life depends on every second he can buy. The first man went down to a headshot. The second took 2 to the chest. His rifle clicked empty and he threw it, the heavy weapon catching someone in the throat. He pulled his sidearm, fired until that 2 ran dry. Then it was just him and his fists and whatever pieces of furniture he could weaponize. A chair became a club. A shard of mirror became a knife. He felt ribs crack, his or theirs, impossible to tell. Blood ran into his eyes. His leg gave out and he fought from his knees. Stay down, someone screamed. Just stay down. But he couldn't. Wouldn't. Every second he stood was another second Stella got farther away. Another heartbeat of fatherhood carved from the wreckage of his life. He took a boot to the face. Tasted blood and broken teeth. Grabbed the leg and twisted until something snapped and the owner screamed. Used the wall to pull himself upright one more time. Why won't you die? One of them demanded, voice cracking with something like fear. Songjin smiled through broken lips. Because I have something worth dying for. They shot him then, 3 times in the chest. The body armor caught 2 rounds, spiderwebbing but holding. The third punched through his side, and he felt something vital tear. He fell. The world tilted. Dimmed. The sounds of combat faded to a distant roar. But through the smoke and chaos, he heard it, the distant whine of sirens. Kong must have gotten through. Help was coming. Stella would make it out. His daughter would live. Songjin closed his eyes and stopped fighting. The sun was rising when Stella finally made it back inside. Kong had tried to stop her, physically restraining her at the tunnel exit while police and ambulances screamed toward the estate. But when the gunfire stopped and the silence became more terrible than the chaos, she'd broken free and run back through smoke and cordite and the aftermath of her father's last stand. She found him in the foyer, surrounded by bodies he'd put down and the ones who'd finally brought him low. The tactical team had retreated when the sirens grew close, leaving their dead and their failure behind. Songjin lay on his back beneath the darkened chandelier, eyes half open, each breath a wet, rattling struggle. No. No, no, no. Stella dropped to her knees beside him, hands immediately assessing damage. 3 gunshot wounds. Massive blood loss. His pulse was already too faint. Stella. His voice was barely a whisper. You're supposed to be gone. I'm a nurse. I don't leave patients. Her hand shook as she tried to apply pressure to the worst wound. Kong. I need medical supplies. Now. But Songjin's hand caught hers, weak, trembling, but insistent. Stop. I can save you. If we get you to a hospital. No. He coughed, and blood flecked his lips. This is better. Clean. His eyes found hers, and there was peace in them. Acceptance. Did you make it out? Yes. You bought us time. Her voice broke. You saved me. Good. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something younger. Something that might have been the man Grace fell in love with decades ago. That's what fathers do. Right? Yes. Tears streamed down her face. That's what fathers do. Grace. He said the name like a prayer. Will she? She loved you. Until the very end. She never stopped. I wasn't worth it. She thought you were. And I think, Stella squeezed his hand. I think she was right. About the good man. He was still there. You just needed someone to remind you. His breathing grew shallower. More labored, but his eyes stayed on hers, clear and focused despite the pain. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. For not being the father you deserved. For wasting 24 years. You gave me 3 weeks. And tonight, you gave me everything. She leaned closer. You were my father when it mattered most. That's enough. Tell me about Grace. At the end. Was she scared? Stella thought back to that hospice room. To her mother's final hours, filled not with fear but with stories and love and the peace of knowing her daughter would keep her promise. No, she said softly. She wasn't scared. She was thinking of you. Hoping you'd find peace. And did I? Stella looked at the wreckage around them, the empire destroyed, the dragon finally slain. But in his eyes, she saw something that had been absent when she'd first arrived, contentment. Resolution. The soul-deep exhaustion of a man who'd finally put down a burden he'd carried too long. Yes, she whispered. You did. Songjin smiled. His hand tightened on hers one final time. Good, he breathed. Then the tension left his body. The pain smoothed from his face. And the dragon of soul, criminal, killer, father, was gone. Stella sat with him until the police arrived, holding his hand, whispering the stories her mother had told her about the good man he'd been. The one Grace had loved. The one who'd survived, somehow, underneath everything. When they finally pulled her away, she took only two things, her medical bag and the locket around her neck. Kong found her at the estate gates an hour later, watching the organized chaos of investigators and emergency personnel swarm the mansion. "Where will you go?" he asked. "Home. London." She touched the locket. "I kept my promise. He died protecting you. In this world, that means something. In any world, that means something." Kong nodded slowly. For what it's worth, at the end, he was the dragon again. Not the addict. Not the broken man. The legend. He paused. "You gave that back to him." "No," Stella said quietly. "I just reminded him it was there all along." She walked through the gates as the sun climbed higher, leaving behind the fortress and the violence and the man who'd been her father for 3 perfect, terrible weeks. But she carried forward something her mother had needed her to find, proof that love could survive even the darkest transformations. That redemption was possible, even at the very end. That the dragon had been more than his legend. He'd been human. And that, finally, had been enough.